here we go, last round of TEPCOTT Season 6. And after the previous round, where we had to deal with all the modders, I was hopeful that this final round of the season would be completely run through without any interference by outsiders. And I'm really happy that we managed to achieve that. Now for this race I was promoted to Division 3 after quite a few of the drivers in the previous race were actually substitute drivers. So I knew that I really didn't have that pace to really race with anyone in this division. And for that reason I just tried to focus on having a fun race to wrap up the season, as well as I tried to enjoy this final race of me playing on retail GTA. Now the starting part of this race was pretty clean overall, without any bigger crashes, despite the fact that like the earlier parts of the track were pretty narrow, and overall the grid stayed pretty bunched up throughout this first lap. Now, this part had a new driving line that I didn't realize in my practice, where you could actually get the checkpoint by passing the tree on the left side. So that gave Caleb a good chance to overtake me. Now I was expecting myself to be driving in the last place throughout this race, but I was surprised how many times I found someone to compete with, and in terms of speed kind of managed to stay at the same pace. So here we had an unfortunate crash, through which I managed to nab myself a few places, as well as I got pretty good speed out of that hairpin. Sarklo was able to get some brake boosts off that straight, so I just couldn't get myself to pass them, which once again showed how the difference of knowing and not knowing where to get those small boosts in GTA racing can make a big difference in overall speed. And here we come, winding down on the last corners of the first lap, during which you can see the separation in the field between the leaders and the rear end of the pack. Now here I managed to get a good overtake from Sarklo, as they missed a brake boost, which slowed them down quite significantly. Then later on I made a bit of a mistake, which gave Caleb a chance to overtake me again after the earlier crash that they had with Kuuleke on an earlier lap. Now other drivers seem to have started their pit stops pretty early on, which I started to consider doing myself as well. But first I wanted to see how people in front of me were doing when they planned to take their pit stops. But then I saw that neither of the drivers that were in close proximity in front of me didn't take their pit stops, so I decided to take mine, so then I could continue with the race without having to worry about my mandatory pit stop. And it placed me pretty nicely just behind Laser Tank and Kuuleke, with whom I had pretty good battles in the earlier rounds of the season. And that way I was hoping that we could actually get a good battle going through the race. And slightly further down the lap I actually managed to take an overtake from Laser Tank, although I'm not entirely sure if there was a little bit of lag contact there. Now a little bit later I was catching up to Kuuleke around the same area of the map, but unfortunately I was caught up in a crash with Aether, who apparently had a much higher speed going through that section, who then at the start of the next lap managed to get that overtake done. And then later on I actually managed to take that overtake over Kuuleke as they were taking their pit stop. And then my last overtake of the race was done with Darkfill having their pit stop. And from then on I pretty much drove on my own, with Phil slowly gaining up on me, but just couldn't get that done until the finish line. Now overall this was a pretty fun race to wrap up the season, as well as it was nice to end my time with this game on a high note of a fun race.